Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be looking at the first TV series on the channel, but first I wanted to say thank you guys so much for getting me over 10,000 subscribers. When I started this channel earlier this year, I never thought it would grow this fast, so I really appreciate it. Before I get started on the vampires, I also wanted to say that the Vampire Diaries in the originals is a little different than the usual vampire movies I cover. You could say they're more similar to a Twilight vampire movie, but there's some really cool characters and a lot of interesting lore to be appreciated. So just to be clear, I'm not going to be covering the plot from the shows other than the origins of the vampires. I'm going to be going over the vampires' strengths and abilities, their weaknesses, different types and species of vampire, some artifacts they use, and probably some other stuff I'm forgetting. Now we can get on with the video. I'm going to start off with how the vampires came to be. It all started with the Michelson family 1,000 years ago. The father was a Viking warrior and his wife a witch. They had lost their youngest child to a werewolf attack when he snuck out with his brother to watch the werewolves transform in the forest. The parents, now fearing for their other children, wanted to use a magical spell to make them immortal because they couldn't bear to lose another child. Specifically, they wanted to make them stronger than the werewolves. They had learned of someone who performed an immortality spell and they wanted to recreate it. Unfortunately, the spell they performed was not the exact spell used by the previous witch, and this is what caused the first vampires. So they weren't trying to turn their kids into vampires, they were just trying to protect them, and things went not quite according to plan. After the spell was complete, they had to feed on human blood to finalize the transformation. There was consequences for this though. Nature tried to restore the balance they upset when the spell was completed by giving them a weakness for every strength they gained. These first vampires are referred to as the originals. Every vampire that exists could be traced back to this family. The spell that made them immortal called upon the sun for life and the white oak tree for immortality. Vervain flowers grow on the white oak, which is why all vampires are weak to it, and the wood of a white oak is the only thing that can truly kill an original vampire. And because they called upon the sun in the spell, that's why it now burns them. These vampires are immortal and are immune to viruses, diseases, infection, etc. There's one exception though. A vampire cannot get cancer, but if someone has cancer and becomes a vampire, their rapid healing and cell activity actually causes the cancer to be much worse and spread even faster. These vampires possess super strength and speed. They can move so fast that it resembles a blur. They also have magic-like abilities. They can compel humans to do anything they want and make them forget specific events, leaving them with amnesia. Very helpful if you want to feed on a human but don't want them to remember what happened. If a vampire doesn't consume human blood, not only their strength and speed are affected, but also the effectiveness of their magic-like abilities. So if a vampire hasn't consumed blood and tries to compel someone or make them forget what happened, it might only work for a short amount of time. Also, if someone wears a necklace containing vervain, a vampire will not be able to compel that person. Vampires slowly grow stronger with age and are stronger than a werewolf that is in human form. A vampire of considerable age could be stronger than a transformed werewolf, but usually a werewolf will be stronger than a vampire while in wolf form. Vampires also have super senses to go with their super speed and strength. They can hear whispered conversations from a great distance and can also seemingly tune out other noise and background while trying to focus on something. Vampires can smell blood from a great distance and can see in total darkness. Their sense of taste or taste of blood seems to be enhanced as well, as they can taste hints of drugs, alcohol, or other things in people's blood. Vampires have the ability to shut off their humanity. This allows vampires to commit horrible acts and kill if needed so that they can feed and not feel sad or guilty about the acts they have to commit to stay alive. But as well as being able to shut off their emotions, they also experience all of their emotions much more strongly than a human, causing a lot of vampires to become overwhelmed by sadness and guilt of the killing they commit while having to feed. It is said the ability to turn off their humanity fades with time, and vampires over 500 years old have said they have lost the ability altogether. So it could be speculated that younger vampires experience this loss of humanity to help them get over their guilt so they'll feed and not die. Some more supernatural type abilities they use include telepathy. Vampires have a limited ability to enter the mind of a human. They can speak to them or even search for a memory or learn something that that person would not tell them otherwise. Usually to do this, they must make contact with the person, usually hands on the head or holding the hands. They can also manipulate dreams, causing people nightmares and distort their reality. Telepathy and dream manipulation are very advanced skills to learn, so only older, more experienced vampires will be able to use these abilities. Vampires can also make other vampires see illusions while they are awake. A vampire's supernatural abilities grow stronger with age, just like their physical strength, so it's very difficult to perform any of these mental abilities on an older vampire or an original. Vampires possess what they call a true face. When their true face shows through, their eyes are blood red and have black veins around them. Their teeth also grow large visible fangs. Some vampires seem to have only top fangs, while others have top and bottom. Some abilities the characters did possess, but got written out of the show because they were too much, was Damon's ability to create fog and mist from nothing and slightly manipulate the weather. Also, Damon was able to compel a crow to spy on someone for him. Lastly, in the very first episode, an unseen Damon picks someone up off the ground and seems to fly away, so these vampires cannot fly. Two typical weaknesses that do not affect these vampires are garlic and crosses. They cast reflection in mirrors and do in fact have a soul, unlike some vampires. So although they are supernatural, they are not inherently evil. Vampires can be killed if stabbed through the heart with a wooden object and their bodies turn a grey color upon death. Vampires can also be killed with vervain, but can actually build up a tolerance to vervain if they ingest small amounts. This makes it less effective when a vampire tries to poison them with it. Animal blood could be considered a weakness to a degree. Some vampires, due to morality reasons or trying to lay low, decide to feed on animal blood instead of human blood. Although animal blood can sustain a vampire, their supernatural abilities and physical strength and speed are much weaker than that of a vampire who consumes human blood. In the first season, Stefan consumes only animal blood and is still considerably stronger than a human and still very fast, but his brother Damon that consumes human blood can defeat him in hand-to-hand combat without even trying. Vampires will die if they don't consume blood for an extended period of time, and their bodies will eventually desiccate and mummify. Witches can also use magic to desiccate a vampire, and someone even developed a serum that would do the same. The serum, unlike other options, did have an antidote to reverse the effects though. Of course, vampires can be killed by decapitation, because anyone could be killed by decapitation, and they can also be killed by fire. Vampires are said to be highly flammable, and will quickly die if the flames aren't put out. I wonder what makes vampires highly flammable. Vampires are also susceptible to magic and magical objects. One such magical object is a siphon. This object can siphon the magic from a vampire to help fuel a witch's spells. Witches have been seen using magic to cause extreme pain by causing aneurysms in their brain, muscle spasms, telekinetically ripping out their hearts, or snapping their necks. They have also been seen able to magically increase the vampire's hunger for blood to an unbearable level, and even set them ablaze with a single thought. A bite from a werewolf is also another surefire way for a vampire to die. The werewolf venom is what causes the vampire to hallucinate, grow very weak, and will go rabid until it finally kills them. There was a special serum developed that could cure a vampire of this affliction. Also, the blood of a hybrid can also cure a vampire of a werewolf bite. All vampires are of course weak to sunlight, and it burns their skin on contact and will eventually kill them if they stay exposed for too long. But there is a way around this by using a daylight amulet, also called a daylight ring. This is a piece of jewelry that contains lapis lazuli. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. It's a gemstone that has been enchanted by a witch. Werewolves also have an amulet they use called a Moonlight Amulet. You can probably guess what that does. When a witch enchants a daylight amulet, it can only be used by the vampire the witch intended, so you can't steal another vampire's daylight amulet because it won't work. Men are almost always seen wearing rings as their daylight amulet, but female characters are seen using bracelets, necklaces, and rings. The daylight amulets are pretty common, but not all vampires have one. It's very well known in the show that witches do not get along well with vampires, and for that reason are usually not willing to do them any favors, which is why some vampires probably have a hard time getting an amulet. A vampire being able to walk around in the day also helps them avoid a lot of suspicion. A weakness that all vampires possess is that they are related to the originals through their curse. Every vampire can be traced back to an original eventually, and if an original is killed, then all vampires in that sire line will also die. So when an original dies, everyone they have turned, and those people have turned, and etc. will all die. So if an original is killed, that could kill possibly tens of thousands or even more vampires. Something unique to the original vampires is their weakness to the white oak ash dagger. This dagger contains ash from the white oak which helped create them, and because of that, if an original is stabbed with a white oak ash dagger, they go into a coma-like state until the dagger is removed. so it cannot kill them, but it can put them into an almost suspended animation. How does someone become a vampire? First, a human must ingest vampire blood, or have vampire blood come in contact with an open wound. And while the vampire blood is still in their system, they must die. After they die, they will come back to life, but you are neither dead or alive. Instead, you are in some unique state between life and death. There is something called the Dark Object, which is a magical object that can create an impenetrable barrier through which nothing living or dead can pass. But a vampire in transition was able to walk right through. To finalize the transformation into a vampire, you must consume human blood within 24 hours or you will die. It must be human blood and cannot be animal or vampire blood. Well, that's it for this video on the Vampires of Vampire Diaries. I'd never watched this show before making this video, and I thought it was pretty good. Not something I'm going to watch on a regular basis because it's not really my style, but the lore in the vampires and their hierarchy and inner workings I found extremely interesting. With it being a show and not a movie, and one with multiple seasons and multiple spin-offs, they have a lot of time to develop this world and a lot of lore in it. So I apologize if I missed anything. If you guys would maybe want to see a video about the werewolves and the hybrids of Vampire Diaries, please leave a comment down below and let me know. Since it's October, I want to cover some of my favorite movies to watch this time of year, and I've seen a lot of people request 30 Days of Night, so I think you can expect that video sometime this October. Also, when I do the polls asking what video you guys want to see, I'm still going to make a video about the other shows or movies in the poll. I mean, unless they get like 1 or 2%, but usually I just want to know which video you guys want to see first. Again, thanks for watching the video, and thanks so much for over 10,000 subscribers. It really means a lot. You guys have been showing my channel a crazy amount of support lately, and honestly, I can't thank you enough. Drop a like on the video if you enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you in the next video.